What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm going to be your host and producer this afternoon, Logan Landers. Join me, as always, to dissect, break down, and preview the Big 12, our weekly roundup, and, of course, game previews. Utah fan, resident of the show, Mr. Brandon Larson. Brandon, what's going on, man? How you doing this afternoon?
Not doing too bad. Looking forward to breaking down some football. We had some shiftings of the tides, if you will, and some chaos in the top of the Big 12 this last week.
Yeah, you're
It's
not
been
kidding.
fun.
We're of course going to talk about all the upsets and all the close matchups we had this past week, and of course, and talk about that and preview the games for this upcoming week. But before we get into it, guys, if you enjoy the episode, please like, follow, share, and subscribe. We go live every single week, Facebook and YouTube, breaking down the Big 12 and all their biggest matchups, top four games we're going to be talking about, and we're always going to put Utah in there because that's your team, Brandon. You got the shirt on today, and you're coming off the Holy War. We'll talk about that later on the program, and hopefully you can get back on track. But let's get into it. First game we have up here on the docket is going to be the BYU Cougars taking on the Iowa State Cyclones. 3:30 kick for this matchup. And Brandon, let's get into it. Obviously, you saw BYU last week picked up the very close 24-21 win over the Utah Utes, and they looked in, it was a good game all around. I know we're going to talk about the Utah side a little bit later on in the program, but give me your thoughts on BYU and how they looked against your team last week. They ranked number 15 in the country. They beat number 23 Utah.
The short thoughts, they played clean football. They weren't exactly dominant in either side of the ball, but they made the plays when they needed to make them. So credit to them on that. Bear really showed up big in that game. Him and Martin, as far as the running went, that was kind of the difference maker, if you will, in that game. Even though Martin didn't exactly run all over him, he got some key third downs there, and same with Bear on some key fourth downs. Credit to them. Like I said, they made the plays when they needed to be made. The turnover margin was a big thing there. They got the one on the special teams. They forced the interception, and then holding Utah 1 of 5 on fourth downs. That was the difference in the game. So, like I said, credit to them. They played very clean football. The thing I'll be watching for is, they just played their Super Bowl, simply put. So, the emotional hangover, let's see, can you get up and can you play at that level, next week when it's not your rival and it's not, all the cards are on the table kind of game. So that's kind of the main thing I'll be watching on that. I'm not saying they can't, but the emotional up, of beating Utah and fans rushing the field and the cookie CEO guy paying the fine and all that, that's a big emotional rush, but can they level back out and play the next week to that intensity? I'm waiting to see it because, like I said, that the emotional hangover and then the physical toll of playing Utah, like we tend to, we're a physical team. The Utes can beat you up whether they win or lose. It's a fight to get in, in that game. So it'll be looking to see how they come back on that. And then Iowa State, they're coming off of a bye week, so they needed it. They were hurting and injured, and that you could argue that's why they dropped that game to Cincinnati before the bye week. But now they're coming off the bye week. They are healthy, so that's good. Rocco Beck's going to be ready to go. I did notice, though, watching them in the Colorado game, suspect run defense. If they were struggling stopping the run and containing the run with Salter and I forget the Colorado's running back, but they had a hard time containing him. And BYU's run game is all that and then some in that regard between Bear and Martin. So I think it's going to be an interesting matchup, but like I said, one's coming off of an emotional high and one's coming off of a rested bye week. So it's going to be an interesting one, especially with it being in Iowa State. Obviously, BYU plays better at home.
Yeah, and, talking about BYU, just a close win last week, but honestly, you still got it against I know you're wanting to go the other way, obviously. But that's just how it goes sometimes. They remain undefeated
football.
on the season. That's football, yeah, exactly. They're still perfect 7-0, currently number 11 in the nation, so they are in that top 12 for the college football playoff if it were to start today. But let's be real, after all the upsets we saw this past weekend, and we're going to talk about one of them here in a little while, it's going to be hard to kind of, you got to play pretty much perfect with the way things have been, all the shaking around in the standings. So I think with BYU, like I said, close win, but you got to have some of those, skin by your teeth type wins each season to help out the team to, say you can not just win the games you're supposed to, but also battle throughout the tough ones. Like with Utah, you guys put up a great fight, and we'll see if they can continue it. Obviously, the main two, offensive juggernauts, LJ Martin, Bear Bachmeyer. Those are, the guys who really get it going. Of course, you have tremendous receivers as well. We've talked about them, gushed over them for weeks now. And BYU, like I said, that Utah did a good job for the most part with shutting down their offense. But let's see, obviously, if the Cyclones are going to be able to get back on track, because like you mentioned, they are 5-2 on the year. However, the last two losses back to back, and they were both in the Big 12. So they've shown that they can beat out of conference teams pretty easily, on the season, like we see with a lot of these teams. But when it comes to in-conference games where it really matters the most, so far, Iowa State, we've talked about them. We've talked about how good that they can be. We like the potential that some of those players have for not just for the program, but for the future in college football, but also the NFL. But we've seen some adversity. Is this the week that Iowa State kind of comes back and says, all right, we're going to keep fighting? Or do you think that BYU will kind of continue their momentum right now, off to a perfect start to the season?
I think I'm going with Iowa State. I'm going with the home team. They're well rested. They've had an extra week to game plan. And like I said, BYU just went the round, like a heavyweight fight with Utah. So like I said, one's coming off an emotional high and just emptied the tank to do it. And one, just refilled the tank and is, going to be coming in with fresh legs. I like Iowa State to get back to winning ways. I got them 28-24 over BYU. Like I said, I think the emotional hangover gets them.
And if Iowa State were to pull off the upset in this game, they aren't, like I said, they are 2-2 in conference play. However, they're kind of grouped in with about 5 or 6 other teams that are also at that 2-2 mark, which includes Utah, as well as Kansas State, Baylor, TCU, just to name a couple there. So they're still not dead in the water quite yet. If they can win this game, now if they drop this one, then they'll be 0-3, which that might be a tough hole to dig out of, especially because I believe they have Arizona State the following week. So that's also going to be a tough matchup there. So you got to start. This is the week to turn it around if you want to, first off, fight your way back into the top 25 and keep climbing the rankings in the Big 12. So we'll see if it happens or not. But for me, Brandon, I'm going to have to go on the polar opposite side here. I'm going to go with the BYU Cougars. I think that it's always hard to pick against undefeated teams, at any point in the season, but let alone 7 weeks deep, 7-8 weeks deep. So I'm going to go with the Cougars in this one, but I still don't think that it's going to be a blowout. I think that I'll go with them getting a 7-point win in this game. So I'll go by a touchdown. Let's just go 28-21 in favor of the Cougars. I think Iowa State, like I said, they had the extra week to rest. Hopefully that doesn't mean a slow start in the first quarter, because we have seen that obviously throughout the history of football, where if guys have a bye week or whatnot, they might come out flat just because you have that extra week off of rest where you're not in that in-game atmosphere or situation. But I'm going to the Cougars winning this one, remaining undefeated. But Iowa State, I think, will put up a good show. We know they have some really good pieces on both sides of the ball over there. We'll get 3:30 kick in that matchup in Iowa. So without further ado, our next matchup we have here on the dock is going to be the Baylor Bears taking on, of course, the Cincinnati Bearcats. Baylor coming into the season unranked with Cincinnati. They are now number 21 ranked team in the nation. This game is going to be in Cincinnati with a 4:00 kick. And Brandon, I'm seeing here it's a close matchup, but it looks like Cincinnati is the slight favorites by about 3.5. Let's talk about Baylor. We haven't spoken about them a whole lot here on the show over the past few weeks, but how do you like the Bears coming into this matchup?
I mean, I like him to be very competitive. Sawyer Robertson, he's got that gunslinger mentality. So, I mean, with that, you really can any game you can compete in with that mentality. He has to cut down on his interceptions, though. That's kind of the thing that doomed him last week versus TCU, which I mean, I was not going to say similar offense in facing Cincinnati, but both are, explosive and well balanced. So he's got to be able to match them. And with a couple of turnovers that he handed TCU, that was really kind of the difference in the separation in the game. So that's kind of the biggest thing I'm watching. But I mean, the dude can sling it. He's got, what was it, his 19 TDs, 4 interceptions on the season. So I mean, he can definitely, like I said, he can definitely sling it. And then I mean, I think we said it last week too, so it's kind of beating a dead horse at this point, but we need Baylor's defense to step up. Their defense is just, I mean, everybody's putting up, 30 plus points on them. So every game's a shootout. And I mean, Baylor has the offense to do that. But like I said, a couple mistakes, and all of a sudden you're no longer in a back and forth shootout.
No, and I was talking about, a really good team on offense, and their defense needs some work, right? And we were talking about that yesterday, myself and Joey Klingscale, in our Tennessee Vols weekly recap. So Tennessee, the offense very good with Aguilar and company, but we saw they gave up, I believe, 37 points to the Crimson Tide in a loss in that game. And, I mean, that's kind of been that was our key point going into that matchup, and that was our key takeaway. Is just once again the Vols defense just couldn't step up in the big moments, and that's what we're here with Baylor on the year, and they're already following a pattern I've noticed here, Brandon, in terms of how their year might be going. And I say that because they started the year with a loss, then they won back-to-backs, then they lost, then they won back-to-backs. They lost last week, so does this mean that we are going to get the start of another 2-game win streak here with the Bears? It's going to be a tough matchup, as you mentioned, with Cincinnati. We're going to talk more about them in just a moment. But I think that, like you mentioned, with the Bears, we like we like Sawyer. And I think that Robertson, like I said, he's a good quarterback. He's a young guy. But you got to cut down the interceptions. That's the main key. 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. Hard to win ball games, especially when you look at that game. And if you cut down even on just one of those picks, that's easily a chance that Baylor could have won that game. They only lost by 6. So, take away a pick, turn it into a touchdown, you win the ball game. So you tie the ball game, but you still get a chance to keep fighting. But I think that that's just how it goes for some teams. With Baylor, they're currently 4-3 on the season, and I kind of see them maybe for the rest of the year, kind of treading water at the 500 and just above level at this point, because I just don't think the defense this kind of deep into the season can make a big turnaround. If they do, great,
Agreed.
But from what I've seen, up to this point, 7 games deep, I don't know if they're gonna be able to play, week in, week out to truly kind of go up the standings and shoot up them. But for Cincinnati, let's talk about the Bearcats, though. Currently ranked number 21 in the nation right now. They've won, I believe, 6 games in a row. Yeah, lost the first game of the year to Nebraska, and since then they've just been rattling off wins left and right. Only kind of close matchup. They had a 3-point win against Kansas and also a 9-point victory over UCF. They just beat the tar out of Oklahoma State 49-17. So they're coming into Baylor red hot, obviously. What do you like about the Bearcats? Like I said, currently number 21 in the nation overall.
I mean, it starts with Brandon Sorsby. That dude, I mean, he's on fire as well. He's 18-1 interception, TD to interception ratio. So almost, equivalent as far as offensive production, Sawyer Robinson. But he's also their leading rushing touchdown leader right now, too. So he's, I mean, the epitome of ultimate dual threat. Only turning the ball over the one time. He protects the football, and then he's responsible for 26 touchdowns on the season already. So like I said, it starts with him, but then his 2 running backs complement Evan Pryor and Walker, and with that, it's a well balanced attack. They can gouge you on the ground, they can throw it over the top of you in the air, and I mean they put that on full display. And I kind of lean into that. I lead to Cincinnati continuing that. based on what we just talked about, Baylor's defense, I don't see Baylor having the defense to contain him, and stop the run as well. Like it just win in the trenches in general, because you've got to win, plug rush lanes and contain him in the pocket, because he has the ability to get out, make plays, outside the pocket as well. And so with that, I got Cincinnati winning this one 31-27. I think it's back and forth. I got Baylor. I think he cleans up his interceptions and it's a close game, but like I said, I like Cincinnati dominating on the run game.
I think too with Cincy, and you brought up some great points there. I think they're going to pull out the win in this game. Like I say, you won 6 in a row, so it's hard to stop you. And we know, like I said, we talked about the struggles for for Baylor's defense, and how Cincinnati, they just look like a more complete team overall. So I will go with the Bearcats getting the win in this one. I'll go final score for me, 34-27. Make another just touchdown game. Because I think, like I said, I think Robertson has a bounce back game. I don't think he's going to have the 3 picks, the only 2 touchdown ratio. I think, like I said, you just have bad games sometimes. And I think against maybe a tougher opponent, this would be a good test for him, I think, against a ranked team to show how he can do. And, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Baylor does pull off the upset, because I think they have like I said, they have a great offense. But if the defense, if they spend an extra 10 minutes a day in the watching film or whatever it may be, that might be the key to victory this week, man. But I am going to go with the Bearcats in this one just by a touchdown. But I'm excited to see how the Baylor offense does, and if the defense can hold up this upcoming week. All right,
Agreed.
Going out to Arizona State, taking on Houston, 8 o'clock kick in this matchup here. And Brandon, let's talk about this matchup here. Arizona State currently ranked number 24 in the nation. As for the Cougars, they are not ranked in the top 25 at this moment. So let's get into it. Let's talk about Houston first and foremost. What are their keys to victory this upcoming weekend?
I mean, it's going to start with Connor Wigman. How is he going to handle the pressure? Because Arizona State, they're a blitz happy defense, and that was that was the difference that got home on Texas Tech, and why they were able to swing that game is their defense. They brought the pressure. So it starts with Wigman and how he can handle the pressure. I mean, he's 11-2 on the season, TD to interception ratio. So he's he protects the football. He's done well that way. But I think it's going to be a test, because I think Arizona's defense is finding their groove that way. And then can they force turnovers? Like again, they played a game where neither team had turnovers, and it was a close win versus Arizona, but it was kind of the way that game went. It was who had the ball last was going to win, and so I think if they're gonna beat Arizona State, they have to force turnovers. But I think that could be tough, because I think Sam Levitt. I mean, you and I both thought he wasn't going to play, and I wouldn't have said I would have picked him last year. It would have changed my score. But I mean, Levitt's a baller. That dude's a playmaker. So I don't think that's an easy task by any means. And then, yeah, like I said, I want to see more from their defensive side. I think they're going to need that to keep up with Arizona State.
Yeah, looking for a good quarterback battle in this matchup, obviously. I think that with Houston, like I said, like Wegman, took care of business last week, right? Wasn't any kind of eye-popping numbers, only 164 through the air. 3 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, heck, you'll take that any day. Like I said, super efficient. I would say Fafita had him in efficiency, though. He went 24-26. You can't get a whole lot better than that. 246. And I believe he also had 269 yardage, 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, Fafita put up a hell of a ball game. He kept him in there as long as he could. And like I said, Houston won with a walk-off field goal. So, I mean, it was a true back and forth contest, in a textbook definition. But Wegman looks solid. Dean Connors, can he continue his good game? He went 20 carries for right at 100 yards last week. And like I said, Wegman can get it with his legs as well. Ran for a touchdown, 98 yards. So, it's kind of that dual threat with Houston. You don't know if they're going to run the ball. You don't know if they're going to pass it. And either way, it's tough to stop either one there. But they got some good players, like you mentioned. They've 6-1 on the year, 3-1 in the Big 12. And for Arizona State, they were the Kings last week. A lot of people were excited to see Texas Tech lose and bump them out. Like they were number 7 team in the country last week, and Arizona State at that point was unranked, so it was a huge upset. And Sam Leavitt, like I said, we didn't think he was going to play, but he ended up playing, and boy, did he ever look great on the year. And I mean, that was a key moment, I think, too, Brandon. If I'm a scout and I see a guy who up to this point hasn't had any, big moments in this season, or hasn't had any, kind of numbers that stand out per se. Like say, he's got 9 touchdowns, 3 picks, and 16 sacks on the year. However, yes, it is important to look at stats and analytics like we do here on the show, but you sometimes just have to throw that out the window when it comes to, can you perform in big matchups? And we see with Leavitt, and also obviously his team effort, so the rest of the team, we're just highlighting him at the moment, that he is able to step up under pressure against a top 10 ranked team at the point who is undefeated. And
a defense that wasn't giving up I think the most they'd given up was 17 points on the season.
I believe that's it, yeah. If that.
Yeah, so to go and drop 30 plus and win the game, I mean, that's a heck of a credit to Sam Leavitt. I will say, it seems like unless you're a fan of the teams that spend the most money, everyone else is a fan of seeing them lose. When unless you're that fan of the team,
of course,
you would like to see the big spenders go down, because I feel like NIL's ruining college football, but that's a different topic. But I think that's why everyone's like, yeah, Texas Tech went down. It's like, cool. You can't, turns out you can't buy, heart and tenacity in a football game every game.
No, you can't get that. You can't do that. But I'll go with my final prediction here in this one. This is going to be a good matchup, Brandon. I'm excited to watch this match here. Honestly, it could go either way, but I think for him, I'm going to be riding the high. I'm going to be going with the Sun Devils in this matchup. If Sam Leavitt can kind of start piling together impressive, more statistical numbers, I think that's really going to help elevate his draft stock. Obviously, good way to start it with a win over Texas Tech. And I think if you can continue that against a really good Houston team, then that's really going to help him, and also, of course, help the team. You're top 24, but you still got some work to do if ultimately you want to get to the top 12, and ultimately if you want to try and get to the Big 12 championship also. But I think for me, my final prediction in this match, I'm going to go Arizona State getting the win. I'll go with the final score. Let's go flat 30 for the Sun Devils, and for Houston, I will go with, let's go 17. Let's go 30-17 final in this one. I think Sun Devils edge them out and pull off the win. What are your thoughts and predictions on this 8 o'clock kickoff Saturday night?
Last couple of thoughts. I was going to say a couple things that Arizona State did really well against Texas Tech. Like I said, I mentioned their defense. They brought pressure, and they got in the face of Hammond, and they created turnovers. And then shout out to their offensive line. They provided protection and gave Leavitt plenty of time to survey the field. And I wrote in my notes, air Leavitt, because man, he was airing out the ball and he tested those corners at Texas Tech. And it turns out that's probably, if I had to point to their weakness on defense, is they showed some susceptibility to the deep ball. But I think they've been so dominant in the trenches, no one's found time to throw the deep ball. But yeah, credit to Arizona State for making that happen. And then I was going to say, did they light a fire under Arizona State when the Utes whooped them like they did? Because man, coming out of that after that bye week and the way they're looking now, I'm like, I mean, you say you learn more from a loss than a win, and I think the Utes relit a fire under Arizona State. So I agree with you. I got them winning 35-21. Okay. I think they're going to keep piling, impressive wins from here.
Very well could. We'll see how this one goes. Another tough matchup here for both teams. Now, Brandon, let's get into it here. I know you're ready to talk about this and move on. For Utah, they're facing off against Colorado. 10:15 Eastern kick here. Well, talk about the Holy War. You mentioned BYU earlier. We started off the program with him. Now we're going to end it with your team, Utah. Talk about their performance last week and how what they can fix or improve on to get the win against Colorado.
I mean, turnovers right out the gate comes to mind, because that's what killed us. I mean, The Utes, they dominated in every facet of the Holy War except turnover margin, fourth down efficiency, and penalty yardage accrued. But like I said, those key turnovers, the one right there going into the half that you can't. I mean, like I think Tom Brady coined it best, but that's like double points when you get the ball at half and you have a chance to score going into the half. You can't muff a punt and give your rival short field right there at the end. But yeah, turnovers, we got to clean that up. We play clean football generally. That's going to make the difference there. Also, I question why 1 week versus Arizona State, we let Snowden shadow and follow Tyson everywhere and he gets shut down. But then the next week we go into BYU and we don't treat Chase Roberts the same until he catches a touchdown pass over our second string cornerback or our cornerback too.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, oh, maybe we should put Snowden on him. I'm like, well, that should have been the game plan from the start. I would have treated the wide receivers very similarly. But yeah, and then freak tackling. I'll throw that out there. There was some atrocious tackling. You can't arm tackle, wrap up and take them down. But that's my breakdown from the Holy War on that one. Like I said, credit to BYU. They made the plays when they needed to, and Utah decided to really get aggressive in the play calling at the end when they had to. And it bugs me because that's something I call it the Achilles heel of Utah offense. But you got to be, and I guess we were aggressive on first down, but when you run it up the middle with a quarterback on 4th and 3, that's an aggressive call and a dumb play call to follow it. So you need aggressive and aggressive. But
Right.
like I said, as far as getting on track with Colorado, the biggest thing you got to watch Salter's mobility. He was putting it together in his win versus Iowa State, looking good. And then the wide receiver combo of Marion Miller and Joseph Williams, they're starting to find their stride, I think, and playing well off of each other because they were kind of the reason that, like, I think they hit a 3rd and long there to ice the game. And it's like, what are you doing? One, giving that up on the defensive side of Iowa State, but 2, props to them having the balls to call it and ice the game on offense rather than, punt and hope your defense can hold out. Sometimes to me, when you watch the flow of the game, it's like, it's been a shootout. Am I going to trust my defense to get you a stop, or am I going to trust my offense to get me 10 more yards to end this game instead of, go conservative, try and run the ball and at least get them to use their timeouts. So, like I said, I give props to them for being aggressive on that. And then Colorado, they got to hold up in the run game. They're about to see one of the best run games coming in. So that's going to be kind of something to watch. I know, like, they've had up and down games. They've had good games where they showed up, and then they've had some where guys ran on them. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing to watch with Colorado on that side.
I think with Colorado, I'll start with them. Like you mentioned, they've had an up and down year. They've had a lot of close matchups, though, games where they could have won, had some the calls went their way, whether it was some self-inflicted penalties, whether it was a 3rd down you couldn't convert, just kind of those small things in football. They're not getting the brakes beaten off of them every week. They're in tight competitive matchups, and we saw in their latest win against Iowa State, that was their big win of the season so far. So they are building some momentum. And for the Buffaloes, I'm glad they finally got their quarterback situation figured out, because that was, for the first quarter of the season, that was the whole controversy with this team is,
right.
Well, is it going to be Salter? Is it going to be Staub? Is it going to be Juju Lewis? I mean, there was a lot of questions early on with this team, but it seems like they finally started to get a rhythm now. With Salter, he's starting to get a little bit more comfortable in the pocket. You like to see that. They always have a good balanced attack. They have 11 rushing touchdowns on the year. They have 12 passing touchdowns as a unit. So they're able to get the ball on offense an even amount. Like I said, for the defense, they've got some good players all in all. They've got 8 sacks on the year, and they have 3 INTs. Deion wants a few more, though, being the former quarter he wants his team
right.
a few more INTs just for him personally. But Colorado,
it's actually kind of a head scratcher why they're not
really like
dominant in the secondary area.
And also, I mean, we always talk about, the staffs, right, on these squads. But I mean, God, look at Colorado, who they've got on their staff, and you'll say, oh yeah,
Hall of Famers.
Yeah, this guy's he's got a gold jacket. He was in the league for 10 plus years. He's a franchise leader in 3 categories. I mean, they've got an absolute unit over there on the sideline who are, helping these young guys out week in, week out. And that, obviously I think on the field, you're seeing that play. They're playing tough. And, it's just sometimes it's tough that, you can play your heart out, but sometimes you still just can't get the win, unfortunately, in some matchups. And that's kind of what Colorado is going through at the moment. Meanwhile, for Utah, like I said, coming off tough loss, of course, to BYU. But I think this is a game where you can easily bounce back, where you can continue, to get back on track. It'll be a tough matchup, I think. It's going to be one where you can, blow them out 40-0. But I think with Utah, and you mentioned they have one of the best kind of pass and run games in the Big 12 in general. And with Dampier, we've sung his praises, week in, week out here. This is a good game to bounce back with, though, to build some momentum. And I know for you and a lot of the Ute fans out there to keep rolling and to get back, in further contention now midway through the season. But let's do a final wrap up here, final prediction. How you think this one's going to go here, Brent? I'll go first. I'm going to go with Utah. I'll go final score. Let's go 33 for the Utes. And as for Colorado, I have them with 24.
Okay. I like it.
How much do you think your team's going to win by? Because I know you're going to pick them. I just got to get a final. I got to get a final score here.
For sure. A couple notes too on the Utah side. Can they contain the rushing side? And I put tackling because, like I said, the display of tackling versus BYU was not one you want to put on tape. And then I also put that like they need to shift that mindset of like on offense they need to play to win, not play to not lose. Like I said, again, it's that Achilles heel of Utah. And then I look at the Benny Snowden matchup to match up with the Omarion and Joseph Williams. Like I think that's going to be a good matchup to see, how well. Because I'm starting to think that Utah's shaping out as showing that they're one of the top secondaries in the league, based on, like I said, what we did to Arizona State compared to what Arizona State did to Texas Tech, who we thought was the top tier defense of the Pac-12. Of the Big 12. My apologies. And then I do think Bray continues his momentum. I think he's the best and most explosive running back of the Utes bunch at the moment. And then got to protect the ball and get back to forcing turnovers. The interception they should have had. I mean, I thought it was a weak call as far as what they were letting go on the field, but also the way calls went, it seemed like we were under a microscope and they could do no wrong. But we gotta get back to creating turnovers. But which I think we do. I think we dominate in the trenches. I got Utah 31, Colorado 17, home field advantage. It's going to be loud and got to get back on track, and not a better way to do it, I guess, than Dion coming to town.
I'm about to say, yep, and I think it's going to be a good matchup. But want to hear your thoughts, though, in the comments section for all 4 of these matchups. Go through them one more time here so you can see them. Our final game here, we're talking about Utah and Colorado, 10:15 Eastern kick. We'll also talk about Houston taking on the Arizona State Sun Devils, 8 p.m. kick. The Baylor Bears and number 21 Cincinnati Bearcats, 4 o'clock kick for that matchup. And, of course, BYU and Iowa State, where we all started off at 3:30. Drop a comment and prediction what your final score is going to be for all 4 of those matchups. And, of course, keep following us here on the channel, Facebook, YouTube, and go download a podcast. You can hear audio versions for all of our shows here on the channel. For Brandon Larson, our Big 12 analyst and resident Utah fan, appreciate you, man, as always, coming on the show and talking some Big 12 football like we do each and every single week here on the program. I've been your host and producer, Logan Landers. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone. Go watch some Big 12 games. And until next time, we'll see you on another line.